Hello, I am Jamie Buckland with the West Virginia FUE, West Virginia Families United for Education. I'm talking today with Junius, and he is going to tell us a little bit more about what he offers in regards to Latin and literature in the classical tradition. So, Junius, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started on this journey?
For me, a lot of the journey began with my own studies. I was studying theology at a graduate level, and I realized that I know Latin really well because otherwise I wouldn't have access to these certain texts, and I've got to do these other sorts of things. Part of the journey was just trying to get the tools that I needed to do that. And then part of it was I've been a big fan of C.S. Lewis all my life. I kept getting drawn into, I've always loved medieval stuff, and he seems to really like these medieval literature, and what do I do with that? And he led me into the sort of building blocks in my imagination. So in the process of doing all of that, once you develop a little bit of facility with Latin and people find out about it, they start asking you if you can teach other people. The first opportunity I got to do that was a public high school in New Haven, Connecticut. They asked me to come in and teach Latin, and Latin was an elective for them. I was a grad student. I needed some money. I wasn't too sure about teaching at all at that level, but I thought, why not? So I went in to do this, and I taught there for 2 years. And while I was there, I learned a lot about high school students and about public school. I was a public school kid myself. I already had my own concerns and issues with public school from what I experienced when I was there. But it was a really tough place to teach because the students just really didn't want to be doing what I was asking them to be doing. They were often in my class because they'd been placed there. And it was just a misfit in terms of I had this passion to share these things, whereas they did not share that passion. But it did give me a chance to workshop a lot of ideas about ways of teaching and moving outside of traditional ways of teaching, finding ways to connect with the students more directly so that they could be brought into what we were doing. So I would craft these stories rather than having them read exercises out of a book for their translations. I would craft stories in the classroom where the students were characters, and they would be translating bits that had to do with them, and that created some more interest. And they would begin to suggest directions for the story to go. And how would you say something like this? And their enthusiasm is driving what I'm doing. But ultimately, I found the public school setting to be restrictive and not the right sort of fit for me. Ultimately, leave that job. By accident, I stumbled into being asked to be a tutor for a small homeschool co-op that needed a Latin tutor. I decided to do it because, again, I still needed money, and it was a good friend who was asking. I got in there, and I was just honest with the kids the first day. I said, listen, I don't know how to teach you guys. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I feel like I'm supposed to talk down to you and do these things, but I don't know how to do that. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to treat you like you're adults. I didn't know that I was hitting on some really important points of pedagogy and other ways at the time. That's just what I felt like I could do. And the students' immediate response was, yes, thank you, please. We're so tired of being talked down to. That was really interesting because even though they were 6 to 8 years younger than the students I'd had in high school, they loved it. They dived into it in a way that made it really, really fun. So I stayed on there, became a small university model classical school. I eventually became the headmaster of that school and taught Latin and literature to ages 8 to 16 with my time there. At the same time, I was also teaching Latin at the Divinity School at Yale for graduate students while I was finishing up my degree. And then shortly thereafter, when I finished my PhD, I also began teaching theological courses there. And then ultimately, I left Yale to go to Baylor, where I was an assistant professor for 6 years. And I was in the Great Text program, and so all of my classes were a combination of theology, philosophy, and literature for high-achieving undergrads. So I've had this strange journey that's given me experience teaching this wide range from 8 to about 80 in a variety of settings as well, from public school, private school, university. And it's all come out of these core intellectual interests that I have. I've been able to shape and mold my teaching around some of those core interests so that I'm staying involved and interested in what I'm teaching, and my teaching is driving forward my thinking and research in other areas, and vice versa.
And what does that look like now? How are you able to use that skill set and that passion for Latin and literature and philosophy and interact with students with your new program that you're offering?
When I was teaching at universities that were very expensive, they were both $50,000 or more a year in tuition. I would post on social media about courses that I was teaching, and I would always get this, oh, that sounds really great. I'd love to take that. And I would sort of facetiously respond, well, sure, you can, just quit your job, move here to where I am, get accepted, and put down 50,000 a year, and then we're good to go. Obviously, no one took me up on that. Not really sure why, but it began to bother me after a while. It was like, why is it that there are all these barriers to being able to study with? Because there are a lot of people out there that I thought, yeah, I would like to have you in my class. You'd be really fun to have in this class, but it just wasn't really a possibility. Teaching at university, while there's definitely diversity within a university, there's a kind of a fairly narrow range of student that you're getting. Certain things had to have happened in your experience for you to wind up in an honors college in my classroom. Eventually, I began to feel like there's got to be a better way to deliver some of this content. And then as the pandemic was kicking off, I found myself transitioning out of university teaching for other reasons, personal and family reasons. And as I began thinking about what to do next, I realized that there was another way to deliver this content. That if I started an online teaching program, then it would be possible for you to study with me at a price that fit into a budget, at a time that fit into a busy parenting and work schedule, and from the location that you're already in without you having to relocate to do so. That could give me access to a much greater variety of students, and that it would allow me to do the things that I love to do, and even more freedom to do so, because there's all these texts that I would love sharing and teaching and talking about, texts with dragons and fairies and things like that I was never really going to get to do at the university. So that's kind of the direction that I shifted to.
Well, Junius, I can tell you that I am really excited to see the culture in West Virginia begin to embrace the classical tradition and what it has to offer. So I'm excited for our viewers to get connected with you and to learn more. You offer courses in Latin literature and philosophy, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And are those live classes or are they pre recorded? What does the format look like?
So all of our courses so far are synchronous. We're developing a couple of asynchronous courses, but the core will always be synchronous because of my beliefs as a pedagogue. I think that learning happens best in a synchronous environment. It should be dialectical, so the student is able to bring their questions and concerns to it, and the teacher is responsive to the student concerns. So that when I come in for a course, I don't have, okay, this is an hour and a half meeting, and this is exactly what we're going to cover at each of the times and everything. And we're going to go through my PowerPoint slides. And at the end of that, I'll say any questions. There'll be 2 minutes for that, and then we'll be done. For an hour and a half course, I come in with maybe 30 minutes of material that I want to do. The other 60 minutes is going to be responsive to what the students are interested in. I don't know when I come into a class everything that we're going to talk about, but I know that whatever grabbed the student about the text or whatever questions they have about the text, I know that's a doorway to a discussion that's worth having that we can follow up and follow through on. So for me, that's very important. It's very important that students have a high level of access to me, that they can ask their questions in class, but also they can communicate. We have a discussion forum where they can discuss with me and with others. I encourage them to email me with any questions or concerns or crazy ideas they might have. And then we also try to keep that communication open even after the course is done. To say I want you to feel like you can email me whenever you have somebody you can talk to about these things, because for a lot of us, it's isolating that we don't have people we can talk to about this stuff. So our courses are all live, and we do provide recordings. We record each session, so there's someone has to miss, they can catch up. And in exceptional circumstances, I've had sometimes folks in Australia or Japan take a course, and so I'll allow them to take the course just by watching the recordings. But the core experience is we're talking together over the readings that you've done, or we're working together over the Latin concepts.
I love that. Now, where can we go to learn more about what you offer?
On the web, you can go to academics.juniusjohnson.com, and there you'll find everything, all of our courses divided across three, we call them learning realms. So there's Latin studies, there's theological studies, and there's literary studies. And there you can learn more about the courses that are open for registration. You can learn more about some courses that maybe aren't open for registration yet, but if you express interest in them, you might move them closer to being offered again. And you can also join the mailing list there. If you join the mailing list, you'll get a slew of resources. For example, a little piece that I wrote called 3 Keys to Passion Learning. And also, if you're interested in some Latin charts or some other things that will help to hopefully stoke your interest and your child's interest a little bit. And you'll be the first to find out when we have sales going on, when we have new courses being offered. One of the things that I do that's a very important part of the business for me, which is a part of the service aspect of it, is we do evening events that are free. It may be a discussion of some theological question. We have one coming up very soon where we'll just be reading fairy tales with children to give them an experience of joyfully reading and sharing and talking about a story together with other like-minded individuals in a guided discussion format. And so being on the mailing list would give you access also to all of those free events, which can be nice ways to supplement what else you're doing at home.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about your work. I'm pretty excited to get on your website and sign up for that newsletter myself and become a student of your work. So thanks so much for sharing today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.